I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this. I always believed that my wife, Kelly, and I had a solid marriage. We had been together for 7 years, and on the surface, everything seemed perfect. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but we were committed to each other. That's why, when we decided to seek the help of a marriage counselor, I thought it was just a step towards strengthening our bond. Little did I know, it would be the catalyst for everything to unravel. The trouble started subtly. Kelly began to change her routine. She was always the first one up in the morning. Suddenly, she started sleeping in. I'd wake up to find her scrolling through her phone or getting ready for work with an unusual level of distraction. I dismissed it at first. Maybe she was just stressed or overwhelmed with her job. She worked as a marketing manager, and I knew her deadlines could be brutal. But then there was the late-night texting, the locked phone, and the vague excuses about meetings that never seemed to add up. Still, I wanted to believe that it was just my insecurities talking. That was until I caught a glimpse of a text one night while she was in the shower. My heart raced as I read the name Dr. Adam pop up. Dr. Adam was our counselor. I immediately felt a pit in my stomach. The text read, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow, I miss you." I tried to swallow the lump in my throat, convincing myself I was overreacting. It could have been a professional message, right? But deep down, I knew that the context felt wrong. Over the next few days, I noticed more signs that I couldn't ignore. She was wearing perfume that I had never smelled on her before, and her mood swings became more erratic. One moment she was affectionate, and the next, she was cold and distant. I felt like I was walking on eggshells around her, constantly trying to figure out what I'd done wrong. Determined to get to the bottom of things, I decided to arm myself with evidence. I started documenting everything: her behavior, the times she'd come home late, and the excuses she'd made. It wasn't long before my worst fears were confirmed. I had a friend at work who was tech-savvy, and after confiding in him, he helped me set up a hidden camera in our living room. It felt like a grimy invasion of privacy, but I needed to know the truth. Then the day finally came. I was sitting at my desk, working from home, when I got a notification from my phone. It was a video upload from the hidden camera. I clicked on it, and within seconds, I felt my world shatter. The screen showed Kelly and Dr. Adam in our living room, kissing. I froze, unable to process what I was seeing. It was surreal, like watching a horror movie unfold in slow motion. The very man we trusted to help us navigate our issues was the one betraying me, right in my own home. Anger surged through me like a tidal wave. I felt sick and betrayed. There was no going back now. I had to confront her. I had the proof, and I wasn't going to let her lie to me any longer. I made a plan, and as I sat there planning my next move, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I would show her that I wasn't going to be the fool in this situation. When Kelly came home that evening, I could tell she was in a good mood. She had that same smile on her face, the one I once found endearing but now felt like a mask. I called her into the living room, my heart racing. As she walked in, I hit play on the video. The moment she saw her own betrayal playing out on screen, her smile faded and her face went pale. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, her voice shaky. I could barely keep my anger at bay. "You tell me, Kelly. Because I'm pretty sure that's you and Dr. Adam getting cozy in our living room." Her excuse came tumbling out. "It's not what it looks like," she cried. "We were just trying to figure out your issues. You know how therapy is, things can get intense." I could hardly believe the audacity. I wanted to scream, but instead I kept my voice steady. "You think I'll just accept that? You think I believed you were working on my issues while you were actually fucking him?" The confrontation spiraled from there. She spun a web of lies and half-truths, the kind that made me question how well I really knew her. But each excuse only fueled my anger further. That night she made it very clear it wasn't just a mistake. This was a full-blown affair. I didn't need to hear more. I had a choice to make. I could either sit back and allow myself to be a victim of her betrayal or take action. I knew what I had to do. The stakes were high now, and I was ready for revenge. I would make sure they both understood the consequences of their actions. This was far from over. The confrontation left me feeling like I'd been hit by a freight train. I was reeling from the whirlwind of emotions that had crashed over me: anger, betrayal, and a sense of deep loss. But beneath it all, a cold determination was brewing. I had evidence, and I wasn't going to let Kelly and Dr. Adam get away with this without facing the repercussions of their actions. For the next few days, I focused on gathering more information and plotting my course of action. I didn't want to act rashly. I wanted to make sure I executed the plan with precision. First, I contacted my friend Mike, the one who helped me set up the hidden camera. I filled him in on the latest developments and told him that I needed his help to make this revenge happen. He was supportive, and I could sense the eagerness in his voice. After all, he had always been the type to root for the underdog. I started by developing a strategy to expose Kelly and Dr. Adam. I didn't want to simply confront them. I wanted everyone to know what they had done. Kelly had taken so much from me: trust, love, and the foundation of our marriage. It felt only right that the world would see her betrayal for what it was. That Friday, I planned to confront Dr. Adam during our next scheduled counseling session. I had already canceled my appointment with him, and instead I would be there as a surprise guest, not as a husband seeking guidance, but as a man seeking justice. I imagined the look on his face when he saw me walk in. It fueled my resolve. As the day approached, I prepared myself mentally. I practiced what I would say, how I would handle the situation. I needed to remain calm and collected. I didn't want to come across as unstable or irrational, even though my emotions were still raw. When Friday afternoon arrived, I made my way to the counseling office. The drive felt interminable, my heart pounding against my chest. I parked my car and took a deep breath. I was ready. I stepped into the building and made my way to the waiting room, where I sat quietly until the receptionist called me in. I walked into the counseling room, and there sat Dr. Adam, looking professional in his button-up shirt and slacks. He was going through some notes, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit him. Kelly was already seated on the couch, and I could tell she was startled to see me. "Jason, what are you doing here?" she exclaimed, her eyes wide. "Hi, Kelly," I said evenly, trying to contain the rage boiling just beneath the surface. "I've come to have a little chat with Dr. Adam, if that's all right." Dr. Adam looked up, and his expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Jason, this isn't a good time. I think we should reschedule our session." "Oh, I think we'll find this to be the perfect time," I replied, maintaining my composure despite the tension in the room. As I stepped further into the room, I felt a surge of adrenaline. I locked eyes with Dr. Adam. "I have something you need to see." I pulled out my phone and played the video I recorded. The images filled the screen, my heart pounding as I watched their betrayal unfold again. The silence in the room was palpable. Kelly's face turned beet red, mortification flooding her features. Dr. Adam quickly stood up, his hands raised defensively as if to shield himself from the truth. "This isn't what you think," he stammered, but I wasn't having it. "No, Adam, it's exactly what I think. You violated the trust of your client and my marriage. You think this is just therapy. How could you do this?" Kelly, who had been frozen in shock, finally found her voice. "Jason, please, let's talk about this. It's complicated." "Complicated? You mean like how you've been fucking our marriage counselor behind my back? That's the complication." I shot back. The confrontation escalated. I wanted them to squirm, to feel the weight of their actions. But more than that, I wanted to expose them. After all, if they could betray me, then they needed to face the consequences of their actions. I had already made calls to a few friends, and I was prepared to gather more people if necessary. The session quickly devolved into chaos. Dr. Adam tried to defend himself, claiming that he was just trying to help Kelly through a rough patch, but I could see that the facade was crumbling. I had no intention of letting either of them escape unscathed. "You're both pathetic," I spat. "You think this is love, this is selfishness. You're ruining lives for your own pleasure." I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I didn't want to lose control. I needed to remain strategic. I had a plan to follow through. Once I had made my point, I turned to Kelly. "I want you out of the house by the end of the week. I don't want to see you again." The shock on her face was palpable. "You can't be serious," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "I am serious. You've made your choice. Now live with the consequences." With that, I strode out of the office, my heart racing. I didn't look back. I had taken the first step in my revenge, and I felt a sense of power beginning to wash over me. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control. As I drove home, a mixture of emotions swirled within me: satisfaction, anger, and a lingering sadness for what my life had become. I knew there would be more to come, and I was ready to face whatever that might be. This was only the beginning. After the confrontation at the counseling office, I felt like I had stepped into a new chapter of my life. The air felt lighter, almost electric. I had taken a stand, and while the anger still burned within me, there was a sense of empowerment that I hadn't expected. I knew that I had to follow through on my plans and make sure both Kelly and Dr. Adam faced the fallout of their actions. Once I got home, I started to think strategically about my next moves. I had already told Kelly to leave, but I needed to solidify my plan. I reached out to Mike to let him know how things had gone. "You really did it?" he asked, a hint of excitement in his voice. "Yeah, and it felt good, but this isn't over yet. I want everyone to know what they did." We brainstormed ideas on how to expose them. I had already gathered a list of close friends who were close to both Kelly and myself. If I could show them what had happened, then the truth would spread. The more people who knew, the more consequences they would face. The following day, I called a small gathering with some of our mutual friends. I managed to keep the invite casual, mentioning that I wanted to catch up and hang out. In reality, I was preparing to drop a bombshell. I had a few drinks to calm my nerves, even though I knew this was going to be tough. As friends started to trickle in, I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. They all arrived, and we started chatting and catching up. Laughter filled the room, but I knew I had to shift the mood. After a while, I cleared my throat. "Hey everyone, I appreciate you all coming by. There's something important I need to share, and it's not easy for me." The room slowly quieted and eyes turned towards me. I felt the weight of their attention and primed myself to reveal the truth. I found out that Kelly has been cheating on me with our marriage counselor. There were gasps, and I could see the shock on their faces. I know it sounds unbelievable, but I have proof. I recorded a video of them together, and it's all real. I pulled my phone out and played the video for them. I could hear the collective murmurs as they watched the betrayal unfold. I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that I wasn't the only one who had to bear the weight of this betrayal. When the video ended, the room erupted into a mix of disbelief and anger. "This is insane," one of our friends exclaimed. "I can't believe Kelly would do this." "Honestly, I thought something was off," another friend admitted, "but I never would have guessed it was this bad." As they processed the information, I could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were genuinely concerned and upset, and I realized that I had allies now. These were people who cared about me, and they were as outraged as I was. I continued, "It's not just a personal betrayal, it's a complete violation of trust on both their parts. I want to make sure this gets out. I don't want anyone else to fall victim to his unethical practices." We spent the rest of the evening discussing ways to bring awareness to the situation. My friends suggested I go public, maybe even consider reaching out to a local news outlet to share my story. It felt daunting, but I knew that if I could help someone else avoid the pain I was experiencing, it would be worth it. As the night wore on, I felt a sense of camaraderie with my friends that I hadn't felt in a long time. They rallied around me, offering their support and assuring me that I wasn't alone in this fight. I needed this connection now more than ever, and I felt my resolve strengthening. The next day, I took a leap of faith. With the help of Mike, I reached out to a friend who worked in local news. I shared my story, and he was genuinely interested. "This is shocking," he said. "We need more stories like this to expose those who take advantage of others." I felt a mixture of anxiety and relief. This was taking things to another level, but it felt right. I had gathered enough evidence to support my claims, and I was determined to see this through. I met with my friend to discuss what the story would entail, and he wanted to investigate further into Dr. Adams' practices. While I was in the thick of it, Kelly was still in the background. I hadn't heard from her since I told her to leave. I knew she was likely scrambling to salvage her reputation, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing that I was struggling. I had my sights set on the bigger picture now, and that kept me focused. Days turned into a week, and as the story began to take shape, I felt a mix of emotions. I was still hurt and angry, but there was also a sense of closure that was starting to settle in. I was taking back control of my life. I reached out to my family and shared what had happened. Their support was unwavering, and it made the burden feel a little lighter. As I prepared for the inevitable fallout from the story going public, I knew this was more than just revenge. It was about reclaiming my power. I was ready to face whatever came next, and I was determined to make sure that neither Kelly nor Dr. Adam would escape the consequences of their actions. I was no longer the victim. I was the one writing my own narrative. The days leading up to the publication of my story were a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. I was on edge, constantly checking my phone for updates from my friend at the news outlet. I felt like my life had been put on display, and I was bracing myself for the fallout that would follow. Each day, I oscillated between anger and a strange sense of empowerment. I was taking control of a narrative that had been ripped from my hands, and that felt liberating. Finally, the day arrived. My friend sent me a message early in the morning. "It's live. We published your story." My heart raced as I clicked the link to read the article, titled "A Betrayal of Trust. Husband Exposes Affair Between Wife and Counselor." It detailed my experience, complete with quotes from me and a brief mention of Dr. Adams' practice. It felt surreal to see my story laid out for the world to see. The reactions started pouring in almost immediately. Friends reached out to me, expressing their shock and support. A couple of mutual friends even sent me messages saying that they had suspected something was wrong with Kelly for a while, but didn't know how to approach me about it. I felt a mix of gratitude and sorrow. It was painful to think that people had seen the cracks in our marriage while I was blissfully unaware. As the day wore on, the article began to make waves on social media. People were sharing it, commenting with outrage, and expressing their disbelief. It became clear that my story had struck a chord, not just in my local community, but beyond. I had unknowingly tapped into something larger, a conversation about trust, betrayal, and the ethics of those in positions of power. But with the good came the bad. I began to receive messages from people who wanted to defend Kelly and Dr. Adam. Some were even accusing me of trying to ruin their lives. One message stopped me in my tracks. "You're just jealous because she found someone who understands her." It was a harsh reminder that, despite the overwhelming support from my friends and family, there would always be naysayers. Feeling overwhelmed, I reached out to Mike, who had been my rock throughout this ordeal. "I can't believe how many people are trying to turn this around on me," I vented. "It feels like they're blaming me for what they did." "Don't let it get to you," he reassured me. "You're doing the right thing. People will always defend the cheaters because it makes them uncomfortable to think about their own relationships. Just focus on what you've achieved." And he was right. I needed to focus on myself and my healing. I had taken a stand and shared my truth, and that was something to be proud of. The story continued to gain traction, and soon after I received a call from a local morning talk show. They wanted to interview me to discuss my experience. At first, I was hesitant. The thought of being in front of a camera made me nervous. I hadn't even fully processed my emotions yet. But I also realized that this was another opportunity to shed light on the issue and help others who might be going through similar situations. After talking it over with Mike, I agreed to the interview. When the day of the broadcast arrived, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. I arrived at the studio early, feeling like a deer caught in headlights. The host was warm and welcoming, making me feel at ease as we chatted before the cameras started rolling. But as soon as the lights turned on, the gravity of the situation hit me. I shared my story openly, detailing the betrayal, the feelings of anger and confusion, and how I had ultimately found the strength to expose the truth. I spoke about the importance of trust in relationships and how it's crucial to speak up when something feels off. The response to the interview was overwhelming. Viewers were reaching out, sharing their own stories of betrayal, and thanking me for being brave enough to speak out. I realized I was no longer just a victim. I was part of a larger conversation about fidelity, trust, and the complexities of love. Meanwhile, the consequences for Kelly and Dr. Adam were unfolding in real time. As my story gained traction, I learned that numerous individuals had come forward with similar experiences involving Dr. Adam. He had a pattern of inappropriate behavior, and many of his former clients were willing to speak out. I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication for having taken a stand. But there was still the matter of Kelly. I hadn't spoken to her since our confrontation, and part of me had expected her to reach out, to attempt to apologize or explain. Instead, she went silent, seemingly hiding from the fallout. I learned through friends that she had left town, likely trying to escape the embarrassment. One evening, I received a text from her. It was surprisingly brief. "I'm sorry for everything, I messed up." My heart raced. It was the first time she had acknowledged her actions, but it felt far too late. I debated how to respond. Part of me wanted to lash out to remind her of the pain she caused, but another part of me knew that I had already moved on. I texted back, "You made your choice, it's too late for apologies." Her reply was quick. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I was confused. Dr. Adam made me feel understood in ways I felt you didn't." I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was the same tired excuse she had used during our confrontation, and I felt a wave of anger wash over me again. "That's not an excuse," I replied. "You chose to betray me, and now you have to live with that." The conversation fizzled out, and I knew there was nothing left to say. I had finally accepted that our marriage was over. I had taken back control of my narrative, and the emotional aftermath of the affair was beginning to settle. As I reflected on everything that had happened, I realized that I was no longer the person who had been blindsided by betrayal. I had grown stronger through this experience. Yes, I had been hurt, but I had also found my voice and reclaimed my power. I wanted to use this journey to help others navigate their own relationships and understand the importance of trust and honesty. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I felt a sense of hope for the first time in a long while. I had stepped out of the shadows of betrayal and was ready to embrace whatever came next, whether that meant finding love again or simply focusing on myself. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, love, and the resilience of the human spirit, and I was ready to move forward. As the dust settled from the fallout of my story, I found myself in uncharted territory. I was no longer the husband betrayed, but a man who was gradually learning to reconnect with himself. The emotional journey was far from linear. There were days when I felt strong and empowered, and others when sadness crept in, reminding me of what I had lost. But with each passing day, I felt a little more at peace with my situation. After the interview aired and my story was shared widely, I received an unexpected wave of support from people I had never met. Strangers reached out via social media, sharing their own stories of betrayal and expressing their gratitude for my willingness to speak out. A few even mentioned that they had sought therapy with different counselors after hearing about Dr. Adams' unethical behavior. It felt like I had sparked a conversation that was long overdue, and that gave me a sense of purpose. In the aftermath of everything, I decided to seek therapy myself. I knew I needed to process the overwhelming emotions that had bubbled to the surface. I reached out to a new counselor, someone recommended by a friend who was familiar with the situation. I wanted to ensure that this time, I was in safe hands. During those sessions, I found a space to explore my feelings about the betrayal, my anger, sadness, and ultimately, my desire to heal. My therapist encouraged me to embrace my emotions rather than bury them, and it was liberating. I learned that it was okay to feel hurt and to mourn the loss of my marriage, even if it was a relationship that had been built on a shaky foundation. One day, I found myself reflecting on my relationship with Kelly. I thought about the good times we had shared, the laughter, the adventures. It was hard to reconcile those memories with the hurtful reality of her betrayal. My therapist helped me understand that holding on to the good memories didn't mean I had to forgive her for her actions. It simply meant I was acknowledging the complexity of our relationship. As I continued my therapy, I also focused on rebuilding my social life. I started reconnecting with friends I hadn't seen in a while. Empowered by my journey, I attended gatherings, joined a local sports league, and even tried my hand at cooking classes. Each new experience felt like a step toward reclaiming my identity. One evening, while attending a friend's party, I met a woman named Sarah who was warm and engaging. We hit it off instantly, sharing laughs and stories over drinks. It felt refreshing to connect with someone new, and for the first time since the affair, I realized that I could be open to the idea of dating again. As our conversation flowed, I felt a spark of hope. Sarah was caring and genuinely interested in my well-being. I confided in her about my recent experiences, and she listened without judgment, offering encouragement and understanding. It felt nice to share my story with someone who wasn't part of my past, someone who could see me for who I was today. Over the next few weeks, we began to see each other more often, and I found myself smiling again. Sarah possessed a kindness that drew me in, and she never pressured me to rush into things. Our dates were filled with laughter and deep conversations, and I felt like I was rediscovering parts of myself that I thought were lost forever. But as I opened my heart to new possibilities, I also faced moments of doubt. Would I ever fully trust again? Could I allow myself to be vulnerable after everything that had happened? There were days when I felt like I was 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I would remind myself that healing wasn't a race. It was a journey, and each step I took was a victory in its own right. Meanwhile, the fallout for Kelly continued. I learned from friends that she had returned to town briefly, trying to salvage her reputation after the public exposure of her affair. I felt a mix of pity and anger for her. Despite everything that had happened, part of me still wanted to shake her and ask why she had made those choices, but I quickly reminded myself that I had moved on. One afternoon, I received a text from Kelly that jolted me back into the past. "Can we talk? I want to explain everything." My heart raced as I read her message. The emotions flooded back in an instant: anger, confusion, sadness. I hesitated before responding. On one hand, I felt I owed it to myself to hear her out, to understand her perspective. On the other hand, I knew I had moved forward and I didn't want to risk unraveling the progress I had made. After deliberating for a few hours, I decided to reply. "I'm open to talking, but I'm not sure what you can say that would change anything." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop in town, a neutral space that felt safe. As I arrived, I felt a wave of nerves. I hadn't seen her since that explosive confrontation, and I wasn't quite sure what to expect. When I walked in, I spotted Kelly sitting at a table, looking anxious yet determined. We exchanged small talk before moving into the heavier subjects. I could see the regret etched on her face, and part of me felt a flicker of empathy. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," she started, looking down at her hands. "I just want you to know that I'm truly sorry for everything. I made terrible choices, and I've been struggling to understand why." I listened as she spoke, revealing her feelings of inadequacy and confusion that had led her down the wrong path. It was hard to reconcile the person I once loved with the woman sitting in front of me now. I realized I was listening to someone who was also hurting, but it didn't erase the pain she had caused me. "I appreciate you reaching out, and I can see you're remorseful," I said cautiously. "But you have to understand that the damage is done. I can't go back to what we had, and I don't think I want to." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know. I just wanted you to know that I take responsibility for my actions. I'm working on myself, and I hope you can find peace too." Our conversation was cathartic in a way. It gave me a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. We parted ways without animosity, but I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I no longer felt tethered to the past. As I left the coffee shop, I found myself reflecting on the journey I had taken. I had faced betrayal, pain, and confusion, but I had also found my voice and discovered the importance of healing and self-care. I was emerging stronger, more resilient than before, and ready to embrace the future. With Sarah by my side, I felt hopeful about the possibilities ahead. I was no longer defined by my past, but rather by my growth and the choices I was making for myself today. It was time to move forward fully, allowing the lessons I had learned to guide me as I stepped into the next chapter of my life. As I continued to navigate the complexities of my new reality, I felt a sense of renewal. The conversations with Kelly had given me the closure I didn't realize I needed. While I wouldn't forget the betrayal, I was learning to separate it from the person I had been with. It was a crucial step in my healing process. With Sarah, things progressed naturally. We explored each other's interests, and she introduced me to her love for hiking. I discovered that the mountains offered a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. Each hike became an opportunity for us to connect and deepen our bond. I began to open up to her about my past, sharing my story and the lessons I had learned. She listened intently, never judging, just supporting me as I unraveled the layers of my experience. One Saturday, after a particularly invigorating hike, we sat on a rocky outcrop overlooking the valley below. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. As we watched the sunset, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I turned to Sarah, feeling a sense of vulnerability. "I just want you to know how much I appreciate you being here, especially after everything I've been through." Sarah smiled warmly. "You deserve happiness, Jason. I'm glad you're starting to find it." Her response made me feel seen and understood, and for the first time in a long time I felt hope. As we continued to date, I found myself slowly letting go of the lingering doubts that had haunted me since the affair. I understood that trusting someone again would take time, but I felt confident that Sarah was someone I could build a future with. She was patient and kind, and she never pushed me to move faster than I was comfortable with. Meanwhile, I kept a close watch on the aftermath of my story. Dr. Adam faced numerous complaints from former clients, and I learned that he had lost his license to practice. The ethical violations I had brought to light had created a ripple effect, leading to an investigation into his conduct. I felt a mix of satisfaction and relief, knowing that my actions had helped others avoid the pain I had experienced. As for Kelly, she took some time to regroup after our conversation. I learned from mutual friends that she was focusing on self-improvement and attending therapy. It was strange to think that while I was moving forward, she was also on her own journey of healing. I hoped she would find a way to learn from her mistakes, but it was no longer my concern. Months passed, and as we approached the anniversary of my marriage to Kelly, I found myself reflecting on the journey I had undertaken. The date felt heavy, yet it didn't carry the same weight it once had. I took some time for myself, indulging in activities that brought me joy. I visited my family, spent time with friends, and even picked up new hobbies. This was my time to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. One evening, as I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, I thought about how far I had come. I remembered the pain of betrayal, but also recognized the strength I had gained. I had transformed from a man filled with anger and sadness into someone who was hopeful and eager to embrace life. At that moment, my phone chimed with a message from Sarah, inviting me to join her for dinner at a new restaurant in town. I felt a flutter of excitement. I was ready to live fully, to embrace new experiences and relationships. I texted back, "I'd love to." As I prepared for our date, I felt a sense of anticipation. I was stepping into this new chapter with an open heart, free from the shadows of my past. I had learned the importance of trust, communication, and self-worth. I was ready to invest in this new relationship and see where it could lead. That evening, as I sat across from Sarah, sharing laughter and stories over delicious food, I realized that I was finally learning to let go of my past. I had transformed my pain into strength, and I was embracing the beauty of new beginnings. Looking into Sarah's eyes, I felt a warm connection that reminded me that love was still possible. I knew that while my journey had been tumultuous, it had also shaped me into a better version of myself. I had faced betrayal, emerged stronger, and now I was ready to build a future filled with trust and genuine connection. As I clinked my glass with hers, I made a silent promise to myself. I would continue to honor my past but not let it define my future. I was ready to write my own story, one filled with hope, love, and the knowledge that I could rise above anything life threw my way. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free.